How are you doing?
Good morning, Spencer. I'm doing great.
Good, good. Got any plans for the long weekend?
Nope, not really.
All
Just
right.
hanging with family.
Well, good to hear. Well, let's just hop into this.
All right.
Um, to start out, can you tell me about a time when you had to lead a project under tight deadlines? And how exactly did you approach this task? And what was ultimately the outcome?
Well, in my previous employment as a carpenter, our team was given just 2 months to complete a house from rough framing to move-in ready. This was a tight timeline, made even more challenging by COVID-related staffing shortages, and our crew was reduced to just 3 people while other teams were spread thin across multiple job sites. I took the lead on siding the exterior of the house and completing the interior trim work. It was my responsibility to ensure we stayed on track and maintained quality despite being shorthanded. And just to manage the workload efficiently, I organized our small team by dividing responsibilities. So I created a system where one person focused on measuring and applying materials, and another stayed on the ground cutting the measured pieces, and I handled material ordering while also completing the interior trim. And this just allowed us to work in a steady flow without bottlenecks, which resulted in um, completing the project on schedule. The homeowners were extremely satisfied with the quality of the work, and it was a strong example of how proper delegation and teamwork can overcome difficult circumstances.
Well, awesome. That sounds like a pretty cool project that your school put on.
Yeah.
Next question. Can you tell me about a situation where you went beyond your job responsibilities to improve a process or solve a problem, and what ultimately motivated you to do this, and what was the end impact?
Yeah, that's a great question. While working as a carpenter on a residential remodeling project, I noticed that our team was frequently wasting time looking for tools and materials throughout the day, and the job site was somewhat disorganized, and this was leading to small delays that added up over time. And although my main responsibility was framing and interior finish work, I saw an opportunity to improve our workflow. It wasn't part of my assigned duties, but I decided to take the initiative to address the issue and help the team work more efficiently. I stayed after hours one evening just to reorganize our job site layout, and I created clearly labeled tool zones. I grouped materials by task in a logical sequence. And then the next morning, I walked the crew through the new layout, explained the system, and got their feedback to make a few final adjustments. And after that change, we significantly reduced the amount of time spent tracking down tools or materials. The job began to move faster, and even our site supervisor commented on how smooth things were running. Created a more professional and efficient work environment. I felt proud to contribute to something beyond just my day-to-day tasks.
Well done. Um, can you give me an example of a time you worked with a difficult team member? What was that challenge, and how did you handle it? And how did what was the ultimate result?
Yeah. So while working in carpentry, I was paired with a team member who consistently showed up late, left early, and wasn't contributing his share of the work. He also seemed physically unfit for the tasks and often avoided manual labor, claiming he was injured. We were responsible for forming footers for a slab construction process, which required moving and placing heavy forms. And so while this was meant to be a team effort, he left the heavy lifting entirely onto me and citing his injury. And at first, I asked him directly several times to help with the work, but he kept insisting he was hurt. So after speaking with other colleagues, I found out this behavior was common, and the injury claim wasn't consistent with what others had seen. So I decided to speak respectfully to my supervisor and explain the situation, including the repeated lack of effort and how it was affecting progress. Following day, he showed up with a noticeably different attitude. He apologized, he worked hard alongside me, and from that point on, was much more reliable. We ended up working on several projects together after that and got along well. Taught me the importance of speaking up respectfully and taking action when something's not right.
All right. Can you tell me about a team project you were part of that didn't go as planned, and what role did you play in that, and how did the team overcome the issues?
Yeah, certainly. While working at Lowe's, I was part of a small team helping a customer select and order flooring for their newly constructed home. It was a large multi-room order that involved coordination between the customer, our flooring department, and the installation team. Unfortunately, there was a miscommunication early in the process about the square footage, An incorrect measurement was recorded, which led to a significant underorder. My role was to assist the customer with product selection and ordering, as well as to coordinate with the other two team members who were managing scheduling logistics. And once we discovered the order was short, we needed to act quickly to fix the issue without delaying the customer's move-in timeline. I took ownership of the situation by immediately contacting the vendor to place a priority reorder of the exact flooring style and batch number to ensure the consistency of the order. I also worked with my team to rearrange the installation schedule so that we could begin with rooms that weren't affected by the shortage. In the meantime, I kept the customer updated daily. I offered a discount on underlayment as a goodwill gesture, and in the end, the replacement flooring arrived ahead of schedule. We were able to complete the install on time. The customer was very appreciative of the communication and effort, and they left a positive review mentioning the entire team by name. It was a great reminder of how teamwork and proactive problem solving can turn a frustrating situation into a positive outcome.
Nice. Well, now can you tell me about a time you were faced with a complex problem at work? And how did you analyze the issue and what steps did you take to solve?
Absolutely. While working in the flooring department at Lowe's, I had a customer who was trying to match new flooring to an existing product that had been discontinued. They only had a small sample and no product details, and they were trying to match it across multiple rooms in their home renovation. My task was simply to help the customer find a flooring product that would blend with their existing one, and that's something that requires a lot more than a standard recommendation. It was a challenge because there were no SKU numbers, and lighting differences made color matching even trickier. So first, I carefully examined the sample under various lighting conditions to get an accurate sense of its tone and texture. I used our product database to filter down options based on color, thickness, material type, and brand. Then I worked with vendors to order a few sample planks from 3 close matches, which I gave the customer to test in their home. I also advised them on using transition strips to help blend the old and new flooring if the match wasn't perfect, and one of the samples turned out to be nearly identical to their original floor. They placed a large order and were thrilled with the result. They later came back to thank me personally and mentioned the effort in a positive online review. It felt good to solve a detailed problem that required both product knowledge and creative thinking.
Can you give me an example of a time when you had to make a decision without having all the necessary information? How did you handle that uncertainty? And what was the result?
Yeah, well, working as an electrician on a residential renovation, I was called to install new outlets and lighting in a basement that had been partially finished by the homeowner. Unfortunately, there were no updated blueprints or circuit documentation, and the existing wiring was a mix of old and new work. My task was to safely identify the live circuits, determine the load capacity, and decide where and how to tie in the new connections. I had to make quick decisions about the layout and connections despite not having full visibility into the original wiring plan. And to handle that uncertainty, I started by carefully tracing the circuits using a tester and breaker identification tool. And I took the time to label everything I could find, created a hand-drawn diagram of what I discovered, tested the load on the panels to make sure I wouldn't overload any circuits. I also flagged questionable wiring for the homeowner and recommended a full inspection. The new lighting and outlets were installed safely and passed inspection without issue. The homeowner appreciated the extra attention to detail and ended up hiring our team for additional work upstairs. It was a great reminder of how methodical troubleshooting can help you make smart, safe decisions even when you're missing critical information up front.